I've spent years chasing the perfect flush rivet and seamless wing route, but today I'm trading my wings for tracks. They say armor modeling is more forgiving than aircraft, but after opening this Airfix 176 scale King Tiger, I think I've just walked into a different kind of ambush. Between the 40 tiny road wheels and pretzel rubber tracks, will my aircraft skills translate, or am I about to get bogged down in the mud? This is a starter kit, so let's first take a look at the brush and the paints. The brush is actually pretty decent quality considering it's part of the starter kit, and the paint lids are practically glued on, so we need to pry them open with a metal tool, and just as I feared, they're dried out, but that's to be expected. I will attempt to go ahead and revitalize the paint, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and liberate some of the core parts from the sprue and get started with our build. These are the track sides. We're just going to clean them up a little bit. Really nice sharp hobby blade is a good tool to have on your bench. And I really like these nippers from God Hand. So to hold this in place, I'm going to use just a dab of CA glue, and then I'm going to spray it with some activator and give this a chance to get slightly set before I spray it with the activator. And then we will come back with some Tamiya extra thin to plastic weld the parts in place. Now we're ready to affix the back of the tank. This part just simply slides down after it's been trimmed up, and we will again use Tamiya extra thin cement to weld the plastic in place. Oh, look at there, we have a kitty cat, and that would be my baby girl Sadie. She's over here inspecting the parts, and I believe she approved. The instructions say that the next step is to process the approximately 40 wheel parts that make up the running gear for the tank. And as an airplane modeler, this is something that I've never had to process before. It's definitely a lot of work. It's very monotonous. These wheels have a bit of a greasy film to them, so I'm going to just use a general modeling technique and wash them down with a paintbrush and some alcohol before I apply primer. For the primer, we're going to use Vallejo's acrylic primer, mix 50-50 with an acrylic thinner in the paint cup itself. I like to have paper as my work surface area so that I can spray as needed on that surface to test out my spray pattern, make sure the gun is working the way I intend, and also to clear out the gun from any material that might be in it before. The key with Vallejo primer is definitely lots of very thin coats. And as you'll see here, I got tired of taking each wheel and spraying it one by one, so I went ahead and sprayed the primer on the rest of them on the sprue before starting the assembly process, which I am doing now. Again, a very, very tedious task. I have a whole new respect for armor builders, for sure. Here we're assembling the drive wheels, and I will prime them after I get them glued together here. Again, the secret with Vallejo primer, at least for me, is a lot of thin coats with air drying in between. I find that works quite well. Here I'm test fitting all of the wheels onto the chassis to get an idea of how this gets assembled, with the idea that I will come back and glue these stationary with CA glue, which I'll show you here in a minute. I picked this technique up off of watching another YouTuber's channel. So basically I took off the outer wheels and left the inner wheels, and I'll put a dot of super glue on each one. And then we'll reassemble, pressing it down into the super glue, and then we'll give that a moment to dry. If you have a better idea about how to do this or would like to share your experience with this kit, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. Here we're spraying the underside with primer, and I will do the same with paint, as I'm not sure what parts of this might be visible, and I want to at least have a base coat of primer and paint on this portion of the model. The paint was dried up, so I used a combination of two Tamiya colors to get as close a proximity of a color as I could get. And again, we're spraying the underside Basically, it will be seen through the wheels or through the track, or if you turn the model over. Here I'm using the Tamiya bottle as a way to sort of keep the track partially round, and I found that these tracks are quite fiddly. This actually, I believe they're referred to as pretzel tracks, and they are difficult to, they're definitely difficult to glue, they're difficult to get on the model. My trick that I found through trial and error was, again, just to use this Tamiya bottle to help form it around, and I know I'm sure there's better options out there, but I was able to get them glued together with CA glue and that technique that I showed you without having to actually use staples to hold the tracks together. And now we're ready to assemble the top half of the model to the bottom half. And go ahead, and I forgot to put in the machine gun turret, so that's fun to try to do that after the fact. Definitely read the directions closely. It's a little more automatic for airplane models in my case, as I've built quite a few of them, but that is not the case here. I'm actually not sure what these pieces are, but they are corrugated. Basically just need to glue them on, and then we're going to put what I believe is a spotlight for the tank into position. And then use a drop of Tamiya extra thin. This was a two-tool process for me. Basically needed to get these snapped into place and then positioned so that I could go ahead and apply glue to them. Just one drop of glue was sufficient for this. And here we're going to apply the actual machine gun barrel. One thing to note here, in hindsight, I would have used CA glue for this process. It did melt the barrel a little more than what I would have liked, and I actually consider myself quite fortunate that it didn't damage it more. Here we're assembling the exhaust pipes. Nothing special here. And then we'll be putting on the clevises on the rear of the tank here. Same process. I did get a little luckier with the back, and then I was able to get them on with just the tweezers. And again, just a single drop of CA glue, or excuse me, a single drop of Tamiya extra thin. And now we're ready to install the shields that go around the exhaust pipe. And I believe this must be for towing purposes. Again, just a single drop of Tamiya extra thin in each hole before we attach this piece. And now we're ready to begin turret assembly. Very carefully, we want to put Tamiya extra thin only in the corners here so that we can keep the barrel, the main barrel, I should say, of the tank, so that it will still move up and down. And here I actually got a little bit too much glue, so I'm using a piece of paper towel to wick out the glue so that I have just enough to get this to stick, but not so much that it runs over and prevents that mechanism from moving up and down. And we'll just hold that in place with a clamp for a little bit. Here, due to the lesson learned on the gun barrel, I'm attaching this ring or half ring around the entrance point of the turret with CA glue so that I do not melt away that very, very fine piece of plastic. And here we're attaching the hatch for the turret with Tamiya extra thin. I presume this is a vent of air ventilation piece, and again we use just a drop of Tamiya extra thin, and I'm guessing this is a tank commander's periscope of sorts. And now we're ready to marry the top half of the turret with the bottom half of the turret. I did have to do a little shavings to get this to fit as well as I would have liked, but overall nothing alarming about this kit or the fit. with the exception of the very front of the tank, which I will show in the second video. This nose piece did require quite a bit of, I had to come back and actually glue it again, and then quite a bit of force to get it pressed up into place. But after holding that for roughly 30 seconds, everything held together and went fine. I don't know if this is like an ammo loading hatch is what the purpose here is. I'm making speculations just based off of mechanical guesses, and that was glued on next. And then we had to assemble the turret. Now, one thing that was interesting in the molding process here, the end of the turret was not, the end of the tank barrel was not at all round, and I had to use a boring tool to get that to a round shape. And then we were ready to glue it into the breech assembly, and then we're ready to attach it to the pivoting piece that we built earlier. Now we're ready to snap the turret onto the tank and validate that it will travel up and down as expected, giving us a good once over, make sure that we haven't missed anything. And here are our final shots, which I will leave you in closing. Overall, I like the detail of this kit. A little fiddly in places. The tracks were definitely a challenge for me as a new builder. There are things I might do different the next time I build one, but overall I'm pretty happy with this. And this final shot, you'll see a big gap in the front, which I will fix before we paint this up for final. Thanks for watching. Have a blessed day.